We're going to have a presentation by our member, and it's about the safety-related research by JAEA, Japan Atomic Energy Agency. Can I be seated as we present? Yes, I will talk about the safety research at Japan Atomic Energy Agency, JAEA. So I have sorted things out, and I will go through them. And this is the table of contents. What's the role of JAEA? What has been the past safety research, what's the current situation, and basic research is one area that we have been engaged in, so I will talk about that. And in view of the direction of discussions at this working group, I would like to also touch on the regulatory aspects as well. If you can turn to page 2, we are independent administrative organization, and now safety-related research of light water reactors. When you think about that, one research area is safety research, where there's a clear definition. This is research to support government safety regulations, and also we have basic research, which covers the areas that has this blurred border between promotion and regulation. And another important mission is maintaining research infrastructure that the government needs to maintain. For example, large-size research facilities, we need to maintain, operate, and also develop such infrastructure. So that's another mission. Now, the history of safety research at JAEA, well, our predecessor is JAERI, or Japan Atomic Energy Research Institute, and from 1970 or so, there have been large-scale research facilities being used for research purposes. And we developed models as well as developed the safety evaluation methodologies and criteria. And now, by the 1990s, Japanese commercial reactors accumulated operational experience, and many of the safety-related challenges, as far as operation was concerned, had been addressed, and therefore research in those areas actually subsided. And I think the trend was the same in the Western countries as well. Now, however, safety research has to go on. You cannot stop it altogether because it takes a lot of investment, and there's a global interest in eliminating overlaps but still maintaining large-scale experimental facilities. So that was what happened. But then we had the accident in Fukushima, and therefore we need to extract lessons from the accident, and we're trying to feed in the lessons learned into the various plans of research as well as criteria. Now, for plans of safety research, since 1976, the annual safety research program had been established, and this had been revised every 5 years since 1976. And then in 2004, there was a major revision, and priority nuclear safety research program was developed. And then in 2010, the second phase of this priority nuclear safety research program was established in 2010, covering the following 5 years. And then the Nuclear Regulation Authority completed a report called Safety Research in the Nuclear Regulation Authority. So it really points out or pinpoints what is needed in regulation with regard to safety. And within JAEA, research is conducted mainly in the Safety Research Center. Now, this looks at the various areas related to safety that we have been doing research on. Regulatory system, light water reactor area, and also nuclear fuel cycle facility area, as well as decommissioning area. So most areas are covered. Now in the dotted red line, this is where the Safety Research Center is covering. Next. Talking now about basic light water reactor research. I'd like to reflect upon the history at the former institute, JAERI. We had JPDR, which was operated with extensive effort. It was a research and development effort. And now, since 1965, commercial operations in Japan was started, and therefore the research needs by the private sector was not as much as it used to be, and there was this gap between what the utilities wanted and the basic research done by the government entities. And therefore, for JAEA, JAEA was no longer involved in research and development of light water reactors, except for research to support the government safety regulations. Now, as it says at the bottom, we, JAEA, have the mission of promoting research and development through collaboration with the academia, industry, and government in order to make contributions to the advancement of light water reactor technologies undertaken by the private sector as well as the administrative entities in Japan. Now, we also have this area that's referred to as basic research areas, and for that area, the purpose is to maintain and enhance scientific and technological infrastructure of Japan and promote development of network for industry, academia, government, collaborative research. And there are 6 areas of research that are cited here, or rather 7 here. Now, this area is covered by a different entity within the organization, namely the Nuclear Science and Engineering Directorate. Now, I mentioned this collaboration between the private, public sector as well as the academia. Well, we have what's called the Nuclear Engineering Research Collaboration Center, which serves as a framework for this. The yellow portion, there are 4 special teams or groups established, which includes the funding provided through METI programs. We have a framework in place so that we can collaborate with outside entities, and there are some specific research conducted under this framework. Now, this looks at, well, actually, this is taken from this report that was put together by the Atomic Energy Society of Japan 2 years ago, and this looks at the role of basic research. And I will not go into the details, but I think this is quite clear how things are done in that basic research area. And after the organization was merged into JAEA, what have been the contributions made dealing with various troubles and problems after TMI accident, Chernobyl accident, Mihama Unit 2. We have had accidents and troubles, and we were asked by the government to leverage our resources, and we have track record of addressing issues.
Next, please. More specifically, the research potential of JAEA includes a lot of facilities. I think it's a great important role for us to provide these facilities. Now, for safety research, for example, we can provide these facilities, and we have facilities for LWRs, nuclear fuel cycle, and the waste disposal. So various R&D projects are being pursued using these various facilities. Needless to say, the outcomes obtained are used to support safety regulation. And also we work on human resource development, and we contribute to maintaining the technological foundation. Next. So this looks at the Nuclear Safety Research Center and the Nuclear Science and Engineering Directorate, what areas they are engaged in, how many researchers are involved in the various fields or activities. So it's a very busy slide. And the Nuclear Safety Research Center, we have a total of 56 researchers. And in the Nuclear Science and Engineering Directorate, we have 147 researchers. So people involved in LWR safety research would be total 200 maximum. And also, those researchers involved in safety research, well, we had at the peak about double this number. So in terms of number of personnel, it's been declining. We think this is a serious issue that we confront. So this is a diagram, a cartoon, needs no detailed explanation, but promotion and the regulation and the relationship between the two in R&D. So there is regulatory research or safety research. So the Nuclear Safety Research Center focuses on that type of research. Now we have the other directorate that does basic research, and then there's also large-scale research using big facilities. And also we have joint research. So we have so-called promotion research. So we should sort out the relationship amongst these. Basically, the large-scale research is something that should be done by multiple institutions with matching funds. That is rational, and that is how it's usually done around the world. One or several examples. OECD NEA collaborative research projects are shown. Far left is the Halden reactor project in Norway, and then the Cabri water loop project in Cabri reactor in France, and then we have the large thermohydraulic facility LSTF in Japan. So we have ROSA projects. We show what countries involved, how long the duration is, what is the funding. What I wanted to show was that these large international research should be done collaboratively by the regulators and the promoters together. That is the norm in the international society. So this is the Safety Research Center of JAEA, and so we've been tasked to maintain transparency, and Safety Research Center does joint research with the private sector. 2013, we have about 5 projects. One example is this project we do with the Mitsubishi Nuclear Fuel Company. And so we have this high-performance fuel using NSRR. So we are provided with specific samples. Without them, such research is not possible. So this is one rational way to jointly conduct research. So I have explained various aspects which is summarized on this slide. The point is the importance of collaboration. So promoter side or the utilities, they are working to improve safety. And regulators also have to enhance their technological level to keep up with those developments. And collaborative research is a great framework to promote such developments. And also internationally, in large-scale projects using large facilities, that kind of joint research is quite common, is what I want to say. And in order to have effective, efficient research, the promoters' development program and the regulators' development program should be put in sync. There should be common understanding between them. As the member Sekimura-san said, there should be technology strategy map drawn up by industry, government, and academia. I agree that that is quite important. However, regrettably, as of now, the regulators and the promoters, they have compiled R&D plans separately. And so joint research relationships, rational relationships, have not been sufficiently built. So that kind of a framework needs to be rebuilt and renewed here in Japan. Next slide. So we should not just be focusing just on regulatory research. We need to strengthen the fundamental research. And JAEA, well, we talked about the trends in budget and the personnel. You can see they're declining, and large projects are quite costly. And so the basic research then have even more difficulty obtaining funds. And this is the report from the AESJ experts meeting. And I won't go into the details, but they make a recommendation to JAEA that in the current midterm plan, the LWR basic research is not positioned as an important item. And however, it should be positioned as such. That's my personal view, and we have this collaboration center which should be utilized to the full. And so this is a summary of what I have said. I won't go into the details. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We heard two presentations, and based on what we heard, we would like to discuss what are the systems necessary to improve safety and light water reactor safety. And we would like to discuss on this, and if you can actually erect your name tag, nameplate, and also you can raise your hand if you want to raise a related question to a previous question. So anyone with any question? Yes, Ms. Yokoyama. Thank you very much. Earlier, on the relationship between EPRI and NRC, research overlap is avoided. I think that's what was mentioned. Now, Mr. Uetsuka talked about transparency as well. Now, where you have multiple organizations, somebody evaluates other research institution or saying that that is an overlap, therefore that should not be done. Is there any comments like that coming to you to avoid overlaps?
Yes, it's a continuous discussion with our members and our research partners. We're always looking for areas where there's overlap. We're never perfect. Occasionally there is overlap, but we're always conscious and looking for it and try to eliminate it wherever we can, because there truly is too much work needs to be done and not enough money to do all of it.
よろしゅうございましょうか。
All right.
それでは続きまして森谷
Mr. Moriya.
日立の
Moriya from Hitachi. About EPRI's research activities from many years back, I have learned a lot from your experience, and I respect you for the kinds of research that you have been conducting. I have one question for confirmation. The way you conduct research in your presentation earlier, if you look at the chart on page 7, you have basic research done by universities and you integrate them and provide them to suppliers and utilities. That seems to be the approach in that diagram. But my understanding is your research at EPRI is very connected to the needs of the industry. I think EPRI's research is very closely connected to industry's needs. So which is more true to life?
It's both. We have many examples where our research is very connected with the utilities, very responsive to utility needs. Then we also have research which is taken from the fundamental science onwards. For example, we have in the past 2 or 3 years developed a new resin which is 3 times more effective at removing cobalt from primary water. And we took that all the way from the chemical concept all the way through to commercialization this year. So that is an example where we took basic science and transferred it to the utility industry. But there are many examples as well where the whole project has been closer to the utilities. So it's the whole spectrum of those activities.
わかりました。了解しました。で、
Understood, thank you. Next thing I want to ask. Well, you have limited resources in terms of personnel and funding. So I think you have to be very careful how you allocate that. So then there should be research based on the needs. Then there should be research and development that you start on a voluntary basis. So is there a ratio between the two? How do you manage between the two types of research based on Cs and needs?
You're absolutely correct. We have limited resources, but one of the benefits of our collaborative model is that the partners we work with bring results to us, which they share in many cases at no cost to us. So our members get the benefits of those research results from our research partners. And also our close relationship with the national labs brings resources from the US government as well into our model. So our research results have significantly more value than the sum of our membership funding. But we do work with our members to understand the research needs, understand the priorities, and every year we make hard decisions, what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. And as any research organization will know, the hard thing is knowing when to stop a project, when you've done enough, when it's not working. That is something any research organization needs to be careful, is to make the hard decisions when the research is not headed in the right direction and redeploy those funds to somewhere else. I hope that answered your question.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you. And one last clarification. So you have research based on the needs on the ground, and then you have basic research for the future, or research based on basic research. Could you tell me what would be the ratio between the two? Is there clear statistics?
I understand. And this is a very interesting question. Thank you for that question. I showed you the chart of our advisors, the picture of the 30 senior executives. You would think that because they work for utilities, they would be very interested in the near-term tactical research. That group has actually developed a measure for EPRI to make sure we are doing enough long-term, what I'll call strategic research. They have actually embraced the need for longer-term research. So we have just completed an assessment of the split between strategic and tactical projects in our current portfolio. And it is approximately 60% strategic, 40% tactical, which I believe is a very healthy mix, showing we're doing what the industry needs and also looking over the horizon as well.
All right. Okay. Dr. Maekawa? Thank you. I have two questions. First, the so-called endorsement or recognition. EPRI issues various guidelines, and we refer to your guidelines quite often. Now, in the licensing process, EPRI's guideline, let's say from the perspective of NRC, should we expect that this guideline is already endorsed by NRC? Can we use it as such? Or do you have to go through this discussion as to whether it is okay to use that guideline and check if they endorse? Which is the approach? And second is about seismic PRA. In case of seismic PRA, SSC, I think the seismic ground motion is very important, and you have to decide or determine how much that ground motion should be. And you just look at the number as an input condition, or in determining the ground motion due to earthquake, is there any comments that you make in determining what that number should be?
Two very good questions. First, on the guideline endorsement. Some guidelines, and in particular, I'm thinking of our boiling water reactor internals program, those guidelines are formally approved by the NRC for use by the industry. And they are clearly the ones that are approved are clearly identified as such. In many, many other of our areas, the guidelines are reviewed and accepted by the NRC, but not formally reviewed and approved through their formal processes. So maybe not quite as rigorous, but equally well, very much understood and agreed with the regulator. So some very formally approved, some a little bit more informally approved. On the seismic and the ground motion issues, the work we are currently doing for the US fleet, we developed the seismic hazard data for the central and eastern US. We have now redeveloped the attenuation model for how that energy moves from the source of the earthquake to the plant site. And we're developing for every site in the US the updated ground motion response spectrum. So we're developing the numbers. We are working with the utilities so they understand what those numbers mean. And the next step is to now take those numbers and working with the probabilistic approaches, understand what those numbers mean to each plant site. I'm not sure if that answered your question, though.
ありがとうございます。それで
Thank you very much. Yes, I think that is enough as an answer to my question. One more follow-on question. In that case, when you talk with NRC or the ground motion validity of the different sites are to be discussed with the NRC, and that's a responsibility of the different utility companies, and EPRI is in a position to just support that from the side?
Yes, that's it exactly. The way I would describe it is we will never get in the middle of a conversation between a utility and the regulator. We will inform the utility of the data. We will help them understand the data, but we will never be between the utility and the regulator. We only seek to inform the discussion, not to actually drive the decision-making process.
はい、どうもありがとうございます。
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. Mr. Matsuura? Thank you. Matsura from Jansi. Mr. Wilmhurst talked about strategic research and tactical research, and concerning earthquake research, there was some discussion just made. Now, based on that, after the Fukushima accident, looking at the Fukushima accident, what do you think? What is the priority research area? I think is a major topic. And so post Fukushima, immediately after Fukushima, at the INSAC, at the IAEA, there was a lot of debate, and that's what INSAC chairman Mr. Mezav told us. And it seems that the most important of the outcome of that discussion is that for an event that rarely occurs, like Fukushima, but once it occurs, it has a very large consequence. Research for those kinds of events is going to become very important. So from INSAC to IAEA Secretary General, that has been pointed out in a letter. And ASME put together a report about Fukushima. And based on that report, new nuclear safety concept has been presented from ASME, and there a similar point was raised that for event that rarely occurs, but once it does, it has a great consequence. You need more research for that kind of event. So as a concept, I completely agree that should be done. But on a practical level, how to reflect that in the research theme and how do we actually go about doing research, that is not so clear. So concerning this point, what is EPRI's view, or there are various parties, private sector parties working with you for joint research, or NRC working with you. So in any of those circles, have you had discussions about increasing research on those topics, and have you come up with specific responses, how you should proceed going forward?
Very good question. Very hard question. Thank you. Yes, it's been a discussion for several years now, the research. The first observation is that there is no binary answer to nuclear safety. It's not, is a plant safe, is a plant not safe. The US approach is a risk-informed approach to regulation based on results from the PRA. So one of the initial contributions from EPRI was looking at the PRA results and demonstrating that for events which are low frequency but high consequence, the use of portable equipment, like has been deployed in Japan, like has been deployed in the US in the FLEX approach, is the appropriate response to a hard to define, low probability event. So that was the initial focus of our research, demonstrating that the use of the portable equipment was appropriate for those events. We're also looking at understanding the state of the art and opportunities for additional research for external events, for flooding, for high winds, for ice, for seismic, all those issues. There are still research needed in those areas. For example, in the US, there are some plants that are vulnerable to dam failures, which could cause significant flooding events. So we're doing some research on civil structures. Another thing which we're looking at is hardening, or opportunities to harden or make more reliable the grid to try and reduce the frequencies of loss of off-site power. I don't believe we will ever increase the reliability of the grid to an extent that is completely removes the need for on-site power sources. But if we can find opportunities to reduce the numbers of losses of off-site power, that will be a net benefit to plant safety. Those are some examples which are being worked on.
Thank you very much. I now have some specific image as to how that is done, and basing things on PRA, I think, is very important. So thank you very much for your input. Thank you. Mr. Toyomatsu, please. Thank you. Toyomatsu from Kansai Electric Power Company. I have a question to Mr. Wilmshurst. In case of Japan, and this has to do with PRA, in Japan, vendors like Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, Toshiba, and Hitachi, for codes, they are very knowledgeable and they can explain to the regulatory authority and input data, and the various input methods or techniques are already done by and taken care of by the vendors, and the utilities really utilize the benefit. And now we're thinking of how PRA should be utilized going forward in Japan. What's the structure that is best for that purpose? Now, in case of the US, according to what you have already explained, EPRI developed the codes. Maybe codes were publicly developed, or it's made public, and so you use the code anyway. And also for internal flooding or fire PRA, the methods or the procedures are actually developed by EPRI and takes responsibility for that, and NRC accepts it. And then the users will input their plant-specific data and then create this overall calculation model, and the different utilities use the end result. I think that's how it's done in the US. So that's quite different from how we used to do this in Japan. And the superiority of your approach, if you can really elaborate on where you think is your system is more superior or excellent, can you tell us that?
I don't want to make a judgment of which system is better. But I think, and Mr. Spinato can probably add to this, I think the main difference in the US is there is the approach that the utility is always responsible, not relying on the contractor. I describe it as a concept of being an intelligent customer. The utilities themselves maintain the competence and the knowledge and expertise to understand what the contractor is saying, to challenge the results from the contractor, and to themselves be able to present and justify those results to the regulator. I think that's the key difference, the level of internal competence in these areas within the utilities.
Thank you very much.
はい、ありがとうございました。
Thank you. Mr. Hattori, please. Thank you. Earlier, listening to your presentation, I learned that in the US, the industry takes the initiative in pursuing R&D, and the relationship with the regulator is also very good. It's very benign. That I understood very well. And then after that, we heard from JEA talking about safety research in Japan, reflecting on past experiences. It was mentioned that safety research needs to be strengthened further here in Japan. That's how I took the two presentations. Now, there was explanation from the Secretariat preceding that, and it was mentioned that industry was doing certain kinds of research for safety research, but I want to know, what is the industry's perspective views about safety research and what they intend to do about safety research. So industry, including the utilities, it seems to me they don't have a clear idea of what they want to do, how they want to move forward. Maybe today's material is not intended to explain that, but I want to know, what is the industry's view? Can I have a response to that? So, JEA's material, I think, covered that aspects of CREAPI and the FAPC, if they can respond, or the vendors individually, maybe. Very difficult question, but anyone willing to volunteer a response? Concerning LWR's safety research, I think JAEA explained that basic research like NSRR or ROSA experiments, when we were young, we took that kind of experimental data and we improved the vendor's code and we examined that together with the regulator. So that went on for a long time. But that basic research since has declined because LWR as a technology has been established. So industry and the JAEA, I think, faces that issue. As we always say, there is no ultimate safety goal that you have already achieved. So if we're going to use LWR, you need to continuously conduct safety research, and that's what we should have done, including seismic research. And so utilities research is based on that basic research. It's more applied research. And aging, degradation is what they're focused on. And as Mr. Wilmhurst explained, for the existing plants, if the safety is confirmed, we think that it should be operated for longer than 40 years. So we have continued the research about the vulnerability of aging. And so I think that's the important point. And also more advanced fuels with a higher burn-up. And as Mr. Wilmhurst said, the cladding that doesn't use zirconium, I think that's a great idea. So maybe that kind of applied research, I think that's what the power industry is focused on and should be focused on. Thank you.
はい、よろしくお願いしますか。
All right. A different comment or a related comment? CREAPI document is also available, so I would like to talk about that. In the first half of the material, it actually covers the history of what happened. Slide number 2 on the left-hand side, special safety research team for light water reactors. And if you flip a page, on page 6 or 5, special safety research team is explained. July 2012, it started, and that's the same for maintenance as well. Safety enhancements of nuclear power generation. We need to be cross-functional and conduct system evaluation for safety, looking at seismic, among others, focusing on external events. And we gathered all the experts within CREAPI in cross-functional areas to form a team to conduct research overall. And so this team was established, and in the interest of time, didn't talk too much about this subject, but from page 6 onwards, it's explained. This deterministic safety evaluation or assessment is mentioned, and the map code that was mentioned by EPRI is also the focus for enhanced quality. And we're providing data to contribute to that, and also the different utilities as far as MOP code evaluations were concerned, they depended on the vendors, but we try to support the utilities so that the utilities themselves can use MOP codes themselves. And PRA, we wanted to really use it in conjunction with the PRA, and we started a trial of that with the utilities, and also earthquake and tsunami events. Again, PRA being studied for that, and for hazards, as you can read here, the applicability analysis of FDS, fire hazard analysis codes. And so these are some of the things that CREAPI has already embarked on. And of course, there are a lot of details that I can go on to explain further, and they're actually explained here. I hope you can find time to read through them later. But these are the things that we have already started at CREAPI, and based on the discussions at this working group, we would like to look into the possibility of expanding the scope of this task. We're already starting that, and so we are taking actions. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。服部様いかが
Thank you. Are you satisfied? Mr. Moria? Related question. Well, earlier it was explained that the EPRI has 60% strategic and 40% tactical research. And of course, depends on how you define the categories. But how about on the Japanese side? JAEA, you have the collaboration centers, you have that kind of a contact window. So can you give me that ratio, ballpark figure? And CREAPI also was explained, when you do that kind of categorization, what's the ratio between the strategic and the tactical? A ballpark figure would be appreciated. And I think maybe that's something we need to reflect on, because the focus of the research need to be revised. Same with us, the vendors. Perhaps how to effectively collaborate with external institutions may be a point that we need to reflect on and improve on. So if you can tell me what is the actual ratio of that research, that'd be appreciated. Well, I did not organize the material from that perspective, so I can't give you an accurate figure. But just my gut feeling at the Safety Research Center, well, we have the Nuclear Safety Research Center. We have the research funding, so official funding, and also we have external funding. So at the Nuclear Safety Research Center, we have 100 million plus 100 to 200 million yen of public funding, and then we have the NRA and JNS provides funding. That is about 4 billion. So that's the nature of that is regulatory support, and also for the Nuclear Science and Engineering Directorate, I said that there are 150 researchers there. And, well, they have more of the operating funding available compared with the Nuclear Safety Research Center. But here, again, there's more external funding that is coming from METI. And so the METI figures include our department. Also, MEXT provides some funding as well. I don't have the accurate figure, but more than 1 billion yen. And so at the directorate, there's more external funding than the internal operation funds. So in terms of external collaboration, we have joint research with the universities and joint research with the industry, and really tripartite research. But the joint research itself, they are large in number, but in terms of resource or funding, well, there's public solicitation, and usually the funding there's more funding from MEXT or METI. And so that's part of the difficulty. But broadly speaking, the external collaboration part and internal funding ratio for the Nuclear Science and Engineering Directorate, the collaborative part is probably about 10%. I think that's a rough figure. And also to meet the midterm plan, to achieve the midterm plan, we have research projects, and also we have external research funding. Actually, for the facilities use and also for securing researchers, we have collaborative relationship with resources for collaborative research is insufficient, to be quite honest. Thank you. I'm not too knowledgeable about the budget, but I've been asked to look into this, and METI and MEXT consigns research. There are various types of research. In terms of value, it's not so large, I think, but it's of a certain size. And as we show on page 5, we show that it's about 30 billion. And about a third is used for nuclear-related research. So that's the figure. And in terms of breakdown of roles, division of roles, our understanding is that CREAP research is reported to FAPC, and so based on the needs of FAPC, there is a request made to CREAP. So CREAP and the utilities and the vendors, amongst those three parties, there is a certain division of roles. That is my view. But with JAEA and with the national government, do we have that kind of consistency actually in terms of capability of researchers? There's sort of a natural division of roles. There is not an official control there. That's my view.
Anything else? No? Okay, Dr. Yamaguchi, please. This is a question to Mr. Wilmshurst. In your presentation, you talked about how projects are needs-oriented, and also national laboratories, as well as other research institutes and researchers are participating in the projects. I understand that now very well. Now, needs-oriented projects and research, if you want to do that, you have to look at the various parts that make up a research, and you have to combine all the necessary pieces together. And let's say you have needs and seeds that need to be matched or paired. How do you develop a strategy to match the needs with seeds, connect the two? Is there anyone like a project manager or a coordinator that does such a design work of connecting them? Or you talked about this steering committee or management committee. Do they go into that level? Or because I think appropriate pairing or connection with the seeds is very important. So I would like to understand how you do that.
Okay, that is fundamental question of the way we do our business. When we identify an issue that needs resolution, we develop a roadmap of all the activities that need to be done in order to address the issue. As part of that roadmap, we also include who is going to fulfill that work. It might be the regulator, it might be EPRI, maybe other research entities. And what we do is we have many project managers who develop these project plans, and we'll identify activities that are needed, and then we'll find the right place to do each of those individual activities on the roadmap and determine the milestones needed along the way to reach resolution of the problem. And once we've identified the roadmap, we review the roadmap with our advisors, with our members, and get their advice and their input to make sure that we are completing the project in time. There is nothing worse than having a solution, but it being 3 years too late. So we always review back with our members to make sure that our timeline is correct, as well as it being technically correct. And then we find the right places, bring that research together in that roadmap. And the roadmaps are public. We share them on our website, we share them with the regulator, we share them with DOE. They share their roadmaps with us as well. And the research entities we work with around the world, we maintain close connections with them to understand what they're doing and what their activities are. And we also do something very somewhat unique. We have a number of our staff who are designated as technology scouts. They, in identified areas, part of their job is to go out there onto the internet, around academic institutions, and just be aware of what the state of science, the state of technology in defined areas is, so that when we have a need for research, we already know who the leading players in those research areas are.
ありがとうございました。それじゃあ谷口よ。
Mr. Taniguchi, please. It's a more impression rather than a question. Listening to the EPRI's presentation and the NEI presentation in the last meeting, well, we're looking at the developments in the US at this working group, and what I feel is that, well, the other day NEI said that they work with EPRI, that they depend on EPRI for technical aspects. And listening to today's presentation, the way EPRI is managed, they have a good relationship with national laboratories. Now, EPRI has professional staff members, and my view is that they are professional project managers. Quite a large number are the professional project managers, and they play a central role so that when they consign research to national laboratories, they still understand what is going on, and they have the expertise to understand and manage the projects. And I think that's the weakness of Japan. Project management capability. Professional project managers, I think, are lacking in Japan. I think that's the issue. If you look at CREAPI, well, earlier there was the talk about what they are doing, but is there really a professional project manager? Have they really focused on educating and nurturing such project managers? Perhaps that's one of our weak points. So that kind of professionalism is important when you have this kind of interdependent relationship between NEI and EPRI. You have this clear, distinct division of roles as professionals. I think that is what's necessary. And it's not just with the national laboratories, but also they use a lot of consulting firms in the US society. They are quite viable. It's a society where consulting firms can be viable. And so even if you graduate as a professional, they can make a business out of that. And people with a lot of experience in utilities, they can be a consultant and provide various knowledge. And so they have great depth in terms of human resources. And so in terms of labor practice, in Japan, we don't have the situation where people can retire from these entities and continue to work as a professional consultant. I think we need that kind of social structure, or else we will not have that depth of human resources. It's a major task, and I think that is related to the limitation that we cannot just bring in the US system as is. Once you leave an organization in Japan, you're no longer considered a professional. That's the situation in Japanese society. And there are many people in the power industry. We have to ensure that they can be viable. I think many people can be very useful in crisis management. And so I think in that regard, we need to improve that kind of industrial structure. I think those kinds of approaches have to be introduced in Japan, or else it'll take time to train people, and it will be a great waste if we don't utilize all these professionals. And listening to today's presentation and the previous presentation, I think the IMPO presentation will also indicate the same, that in terms of utilizing human resources, we need more mobility in the workforce, something that we should start to think about. I think that's relevant for safety as well. That's my personal impression.
質問
So I guess that was not a question. So if you have a comment.
それでは
Okay. Mr. Sekimura, please. Or doctor, rather. Thank you. I heard the two presentations and the discussions afterwards. And based on what we heard in the previous working group discussion last week, I would like to make some comments. Strategic versus tactical research, what's the split, was an earlier question. And part of that answer would be, well, the funds for research is such and such, therefore, was the discussion we heard. But the source of research funding that determines the things to be researched on and the structure for the research, I think this is not how it should be. It's the other way around. You have the purpose and the challenges that you have to find solutions to. You have challenges, short-term and long-term, and you need to elucidate the structure, and you have to manage the project accordingly. That's necessary, of course, and collaboration would be necessary, and that will also depend on the nature of the challenge, and we have to think of that optimum structure in the Japanese context. Therefore, how things should be organized to facilitate such a mechanism. We talked about roadmap, and EPRI presentation really explained how they do it there. In case of Japan, how that should be is something that we need to have deeper discussions on going forward. Now, here's my question. I have a question. Now, for EPRI, you talked about the roadmap, something that you can call a roadmap. You said that it's public. On page 14 on your material, for example, this is a rather simple diagram looking at the different areas and the programs. However, if you were to have a roadmap that is already made public, maybe you should show it in an easier to understand manner than this. I think that would be quite important and necessary. Is it the EPRI's responsibility, or maybe it's the responsibility of some other entity? What is your view on that? Which entity should be responsible for making it easier to understand for the people? Okay,
the slide you refer to is not what we would term a roadmap. We have currently approximately 70 roadmaps in the nuclear sector, and each roadmap addresses a technical issue, a problem which needs to be resolved. And they are multiple pages, address multiple organizations, multiple years, identify the research needed, who is going to do it, when it's going to be done by, where the funding for each step is coming from, and how they're interconnected. So we view it as our responsibility to have those clear roadmaps, which we use to coordinate our research with other entities. The NRC Research Department have roadmaps which they coordinate with ours. The Department of Energy have roadmaps which they coordinate with ours. So I think we all recognize the importance of the roadmaps, the importance of coordinating our efforts, but just to be clear, that slide is not representative of one of our roadmaps.
Maybe details you can discuss directly with him. I think we're going way over time. Just a word, please. Mr. Sekimura made a very fundamental, or raised a very fundamental issue. So I want to add to my earlier comment. Basically, our research institutes have a midterm plan. We have been given a midterm plan. So before compiling the midterm plan, there should be thorough discussion amongst the national government and industry, discussing what is important, what is necessary. And AESJ should also be involved. And if there is sufficient debate there, then that should be reflected in the midterm plan, and that should not be a problem. And so based on that, we as independent administrative institution work on the research. So that the research topic is already gone through thorough discussion, and then that would not be a problem. And earlier I talked about a budget and funding, and NRA or METI provides external funding. And basically that is there is debate in the national government, and the project is positioned in the overall picture, and so based on that we incorporate that into our activities. So in terms of strategy and tactical, well, I talked from the perspective of external collaboration, but we do need to look at the breakdown between strategic and tactical and what to emphasize. And the point I can raise is that there is insufficient collaboration in Japan, and so we like to give that a high priority. I think we're 15 minutes over time. Mr. Wilmhurst, thank you so much for your presentation.